More than half a century ago, John B. Calhoun watched a society of mice unravel. They had food, water, shelter, and yet their social world eventually broke down. Calhoun called what emerged a behavioral sink. But humans aren't mice. Universe 25 isn't a prophecy of our future. So maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe the question isn't whether we're becoming like Calhoun's mice. Maybe it's whether we're building ourselves a cage. Because if something like a human behavioral sink were possible, what would the early warning signs actually look like? Consider an ordinary day. You can work without leaving home, order dinner without speaking to anyone, shop without a cashier, find entertainment or even companionship without another person in the room. None of this is inherently bad. Convenience can genuinely improve our lives. But something strange happens when we stop looking at these changes individually and begin looking at the direction they share. They make other people increasingly optional. And maybe that's worth noticing. And it raises a strange question. What disappears when fewer people depend on our presence? Parent, friend, neighbor, coworker, caregiver. These aren't merely relationships. They're roles, ways of answering an important human question. Who needs me? We've learned to think of needing nobody as freedom, but there's another side to that bargain. What happens when nobody needs us? Being alone isn't the same thing as being unnecessary. Solitude can restore us. The concern is not being alone. It's becoming unnecessary to another. Think about the last time that someone genuinely needed you. Not liked your post, not sent you a message, but needed your presence. How did it feel to matter in a way that couldn't be automated? Increasingly, many of the systems we're building promise something different. The benefit without the relationship, validation without belonging, companionship without compromise, entertainment without gathering, communication without proximity. When we remove the need for one another, we may also remove some of the places where meaning used to grow. And then there's friction. We usually treat friction as a problem. Waiting is inefficient. Small talk is awkward. Compromise is annoying. Other people are unpredictable. So we engineer around them. But some of the friction we've been removing may have been carrying social functions we never noticed. A difficult conversation exercises empathy. A neighbor asking for help creates reciprocity. A public bench gives two strangers a reason to stay. Even boredom can force us to remain with ourselves or with each other long enough for something unexpected to happen. That doesn't mean inconvenience is good for us, but some forms of friction may have been doing more than merely slowing us down. Efficiency asks, how can we make this easier? Maybe we should occasionally ask another question. What disappears when we do? And here's the uncomfortable part. We aren't merely victims of this environment. We participate in building it, usually for perfectly understandable reasons. We choose what's faster, easier, safer, and more convenient. No single choice builds the cage, but millions of reasonable choices, they can still create an environment nobody consciously chose. So look at your own life. Has convenience quietly made anyone more optional than they used to be? And here's a possibility worth considering. What if these changes begin reinforcing one another? Human contact becomes easier to avoid. We get less practice navigating its difficulties. Real relationships may begin to feel more demanding. Frictionless substitutes become more attractive. A behavioral sink wouldn't need a trap door. It could emerge from 1,000 small exits. But we should be careful. Change isn't decline simply because it's unfamiliar. Novelty isn't evidence. Dysfunction is. The question is whether these changes begin eroding our capacity for durable relationships. meaningful roles, reciprocity, agency, and belonging. One person working from home isn't a behavioral sink. Neither is a self-checkout machine, or an AI companion, or an empty family home, or somebody spending Saturday night watching Netflix alone. The danger, if there is one, isn't any single behavior. It's the pattern. Roles weaken. Human contact becomes easier to avoid. Digital substitutes improve. Withdrawal becomes effortless. Eventually, something that once seemed unusual simply becomes ordinary. That's where I place the behavioral threshold. This is the point where enough small changes accumulate and they normalize so that we stop recognizing them as changes at all. It's not the sink, it's the warning before it. And this is where the comparison to Universe 25 finally breaks down. The mice couldn't examine the experiment. We can. We can ask whether a substitute for connection is actually connection, and whether being independent of everyone is really the same thing as being free. The point isn't to smash the machines, abandon technology, or romanticize the past. It's simply to notice what we're building. So here's one experiment. The next time convenience removes another person from your day, notice the trade-off. You don't always have to reject the convenience. Just ask, what am I gaining, and what human interaction am I giving up? And occasionally, choose the less efficient option. Not because inconvenience is virtuous, but because another human being might be worth the friction. A behavioral threshold matters only if recognizing it gives us time to choose another direction. So perhaps the question for Universe 26 is not, are we becoming like Calhoun's mice? Maybe it's this: when does convenience stop helping human relationships and begin making them optional? Calhoun's mice couldn't understand the experiment they were living inside. We can. And maybe recognizing the cage is the first step toward deciding we don't want to live in it. Well, what do you think? Do you see signs of a human behavioral sink? Or are we making too much of ordinary social change? Please tell us what you think in the comments section. And if you'd like to keep looking for the footprints with us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps our little outpost out here. Until next time, this has been Cateotu, your host for Universe 26, the channel at the end of the universe.